Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Truth or Demons podcast. I'm your host, Stevie, and I know I promised some case file episodes and the episode about my trip to Salem, but I find myself behind again and having to get some work and another wedding dress alteration done first. Sorry, guys. I'm working on getting some pre-recorded stuff done so you don't have to go so long in between releases when my day job takes over. I truly love my day job, guys. It just takes up most of my energy a lot of the time. So, for today, I have an interview to share with you. I sit down with Rick Hale from the Shadow Initiative with Stephen Lancaster and Rick Hale. He and Stephen also have a paranormal show in the works called Paranormal360, which we will talk a bit more about, as well as some other things that are near and dear to Rick's heart. Rick is also a paranormal investigator and an author. I had such a great time interviewing Rick, especially after I was on his show with Stephen, the Shadow Initiative. That reminds me, if you haven't heard that interview yet, definitely go check it out and give them a follow and maybe some stars on Spotify. And don't forget to subscribe to their YouTube channel as well. I'll link everything in the show notes and down below. Okay, I won't keep you waiting. Please enjoy the interview.
If you would, please introduce yourself and tell the listeners a little bit about you.
My name is Rick Hale. I am the author of 4 books on the paranormal. I am also the co-host of the Shadow Initiative Paranormal Talk and TV. I have been involved one way or the other with the paranormal since at least 1982.
That is awesome. So my favorite question to start off with for questions is, what got you interested in the paranormal?
Well, I know that a lot of people, especially nowadays, they want to hear like this. Well, I had this horrifying incident when I was a child, and I had this demon or evil spirit that was haunting me. But actually, my very first experience was really quite positive, and it was when I was 8 years old. My grandparents had this old home in Franklin Park, Illinois, which was it's kind of like a city just northwest of Chicago. And my parents were going through a really bad divorce at the time. So my dad was living with his parents, and he was at work. My sister couldn't come for that weekend because she was sick. So it was my cousin Chris and I, and we just got done watching a Cubs game. And we both fell asleep in the front room. So my grandmother, she always left the light on in the hallway, or rather in the bathroom, because there was no light in the hallway. And if anybody's familiar with these really old homes in Chicago, you had the front room, which was at the front of the house, a long hallway, and then there was the kitchen and bedrooms and stuff towards the back. So my grandmother, she always left the light on in the bathroom for us, so we could find our way in this hallway. And I got up to use it, and I could see the bathroom light, and the door was, kind of not really closed, but kind of ajar. And so I see movement around in this bathroom, and I knew it couldn't have been my grandparents, and I knew it was my cousin because my cousin was sleeping next to me in the front room. And for those who don't know, front room is Chicago for living room or family room. And so as I got closer, I could see this shadow moving around, and all of a sudden the light just flicked off. Now that was really scary because I'm only 8 years old, and the whole hallway in that area was just in darkness. And I see this woman come walking out of the bathroom, and it's not my grandmother. It's a much older woman, very tall, very thin. My grandmother was a very short woman, and I'm looking at her, and I'm not really feeling afraid because she didn't really give off that kind of a feeling. And she turned around and she looked down at me and she smiled, and she said with this very thick Irish accent, and I'm not even going to try and do the Irish accent because I would just sound like an idiot. Probably cause an international incident with Ireland or something. She looks down at me and she says, "My, what a fine young lad."
My, what a fine young lad.
And she feels my chin. And when she touches my chin, it feels kind of like static electricity. And she smiles and then turns and walks towards the kitchen. And I watch as she just sort of melts into the shadows, like just fades away. So the next morning, I'm telling my grandmother about it, and my grandmother just told me, she's like, "Oh, you don't have to worry about her. You don't have to be afraid of her. That's just old Mrs. McNett. I
Oh,
see
I
her
love
all
it.
the time." So yeah, so it's like, but I wasn't the only person that had some kind of experience with this spirit in my grandparents' home, Mrs. McNett. And just for like clarification, Mrs. McNett was the wife of the man who owned my grandparents' building. He was still very much alive and lived on the top floor. She had died sometime in the early 1970s. And I wasn't the only one that had an experience. My uncle had seen her. My cousin Vicky from Alabama said that she got a little bit too close to the stove in the kitchen, and she felt a hand on her shoulder kind of nudge her away and said, "Be careful, you'll burn yourself," in an Irish accent.
Be careful, you'll burn yourself.
So it's like everybody in my grandparents' house, whoever came to visit, knew that the house was haunted. So, for lack of a better term, inhabited by the breathing impaired, I guess, is a nicer way of saying it. But yeah, so it was like my very first experience was very positive and very, it set me on this path of learning more about this subject, and that's exactly what I did. From about that time until I was 17 years old, when I had my first investigation, I read pretty much everything that I possibly could. And, back then, it wasn't like it was now, where you could just walk into any library or any bookstore and find, dozens and dozens of books. You were lucky, even with the Chicago Public Library, if you had maybe 5 or 6 books that were sitting on
Right.
on the on the shelves. So it was kind of over time, that I kind of, just learned everything that I could about it.
That's awesome. I love that. And I can understand that. When I was younger and I first took interest, we had a couple books in my school library, and I would check them
Mhm.
out over and over and over again. And then one day they were gone, and I'm not really sure why, but we no longer had an occult section, is what they refer to it as. And so
Yeah,
I had to go to the bigger library after that and start finding it there. But then, of course, when the internet became so popular and we started having more access to things, that's when I really got like into researching and looking stuff up and learning, because I didn't even know you could access when I was little. I didn't know there were books like that told these stories and had this
yeah.
information. So it was really exciting to learn all that. So I love that. And I love that your first experience was a positive one. You don't hear that a lot because people tend to just be afraid regardless of what's happening to them. So
Well, that's true. Especially with the paranormal nowadays, they want to make everybody think that, this is something that is to be feared, and, there's demons everywhere and evil
yeah.
spirits are out to get you. And, I've been investigating since 1991. Actively investigating. I've never come across anything like that. Yeah, I've come across a few like shitty human spirits, people that were just assholes in life, so they carry that over to death. And
Yeah.
that really is, kind of more what you're going to deal with.
Yeah, I agree. And I personally have never experienced anything that you would call evil or demonic. And same, if it was anything negative, it was just because the spirit itself was from a negative background of some sort. So,
Right.
all right. So how do you feel about current paranormal shows and content available on platforms like YouTube and TikTok?
Well, I do like your show. I mean, I like your show. There's a few podcasts I listen to, and of course, being co-host of the Shadow Initiative, Paranormal Talk and TV. But with the current crop of television shows, I don't watch them. I really
Same.
don't. I don't even watch them just out of like curiosity, or we need to talk about this intelligently on my show, because really all you get on these shows is just sensationalism, people
Hmm.
screaming at things that probably aren't even there to begin with. And it's all theatrics, and it's all done for ratings, and it's all done to scare and titillate you. I think that you can have a good show without the theatrics and without people acting like lunatics, like Zach
Yeah.
Bagans every week getting possessed by something, whatever it may be. But
Every time,
yeah, the current crop of television shows are just shit, in my personal and humble opinion.
I absolutely agree. And I get really excited when I come across a show that is about the real stuff or is about exposing the lies. Or like you said, like there could be shows out there that are entertaining without being over the top, without like making a bunch of dramatic nonsense that for jump scares and stuff. Like I know people enjoy jump scares, but I think when it comes to what we're trying to do as a paranormal community and get out the real information, I think it's kind of detrimental to the mission, and it kind of makes a mockery of it, which it's already hard to get people to believe and accept that the paranormal does exist. So when you have all these really, really well-known content creators mocking it, it gets really frustrating.
Oh, it really does. And it's funny too, because Stephen Lancaster and we've had a lot of different kinds of people on our show, and we've had a few somewhat famous TV paranormal investigators, because I thought, hey, those are going to be great guests, but it really kind of just turned out that they didn't know what the fuck, pardon my language,
No, you're good.
they were even talking about. It's like the only thing they got going for them, that they look good in front of the camera. That's it.
Yeah.
They know nothing about psychical research. They know, nothing about theories or about finding ghosts, or even what a ghost is. And these are the people that get ahead. There really is no talent whatsoever. It's just that they're really, really well connected. And that's something that I like to tell people, that, Stephen and I, sure, he's done a lot of television. I've never really done television. I don't think people want to look at me, so that's cool. But, the people that you currently have on TV that have also been guests, I've also had people admit to me that, yeah, I'll fake stuff just to be famous. Because they really don't have any talent. They really don't know what they're talking about, but they found this outlet that's going to make them look good, make them look like that what they're doing.
Yeah, and it seems like they have that thing that's needed for TV too, which doesn't always match up to the skill level that should be also needed.
See, I that's the word the words that I was looking for. Skill level. Sure, they look good in front of the camera, but they just lack the skill level. So yeah, I want to piggyback
right
like that.
I like that. So I want to hear more about your show, how you got started, what your mission is, how it's going.
Well, first off, it's going really well. I wouldn't start off with that, but when it comes to the Shadow Initiative Paranormal Talk and TV, it's funny because 3 or 4 years ago, when Stephen wanted to create this, he had gone to several other people to co-host. I was not his first choice. I was one of the choices, which I'm okay with. But he contacted me one day, and Stephen and I, we had known each other for, I want to say 17 or 18 years. And because he was a guest on an old podcast that I co-hosted back in the early 2000s. And we just have always been friends since then. And he comes to me one day and he's like, you weren't my first choice. I've talked to many different people, but I always come back to this. I can't find anything wrong with you. And
that's a great compliment.
Yeah, it was a very good compliment. And it's true. What you see is what you get. I'm not hiding anything. I'm not faking anything. And I'm going to be honest with people, and I'm going to tell them how it is. And that's the thing that we do with the Shadow Initiative. We want people to think. We're not always going to say the popular thing. We're not always going to say the thing that is going to make us famous or give us notoriety. We are going to give you the truth. And that is what we're all about. That is our mission. We want you to think. We want you to hear the truth. We want you to know what this is really all about.
I love that. That is awesome, because that is my personal mission when I started. And I I love seeing, the more I do this and the more people I meet and the more like interactions I have, I love that there are other people out there that think that deeply about it and want the truth as much as I do. Because at first I thought, I'm kind of talking to a brick wall here, because it seems like no one wants to accept that there are truths to these things, like behind these things people are taking in as truth, like all the movies, because people love to start in a movie and believe whatever stories come through in the movie. And then you have like different locations that like to perpetuate whatever falsehoods are out there to make money,
Yeah.
like on tourism and such. And so like it seems when I started, it seemed like no one wanted to or cared to know the truths behind all this stuff. So it's so nice to see and meet more and more people and see more and more shows that I didn't know about before. Because like obviously you guys have been out for a while, and the fact that I didn't know about you before frustrates me, because like the sea of things available, it's hard to find in all of that what's worth listening to and your time. Like you said, you don't watch those other shows. I don't watch them either. And then I come across like my favorite debunkers who are doing clips of these shows. So I don't have to watch the show. I could just watch the debunker and watch them point out the truth. So I enjoyed that. But to know that there's more shows like yours, and for me to be able to have you on and let other people know, hey, it's not just me doing this. Like for all my fans that have just tuned in and are just now realizing some of these truths, there's more out there for you to find. And so that's why I wanted to have you on and talk about your show.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, but you are right. You know, right now, and I hate using the word literally, but there are
I get
literally
it.
thousands of shows that are paranormal themed, and it's really hard to come across ones that actually have some substance and some meaning. When I got started with paranormal podcasting back in the early 2000s, with Paranormal Underground Radio, we were one of the original ones. We were one of the first shows that was doing anything like this theme. And then after that, it's just there. You know, you go on Spotify or any of the other places where you get your paranormal podcast fix, and like I said, there are literally thousands of them, and it's really hard to know which ones that are going to be good. And that's what's nice about word of mouth. Like I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen to Stevie A's show, Truth or Demons podcast. You're going to get the truth from that one as well.
I love that. And thank you for that. And I'm glad that I can have more shows to get out there too, because it can get kind of frustrating having only one voice giving you the information. So to have it corroborated in other areas is also like really powerful, especially for everyone's mission. So I love that. And now that I know like about your show and your podcast, when you guys had me on your show, which thank you for that, I had a great time. But you told me about your show, your project that you're working on, the Paranormal360, and I was super intrigued. I've been telling people about it. I've been telling are super intrigued. So would you tell my listeners a little bit more about it?
Absolutely. Stephen and I created this idea for a television show called Paranormal360, Paranormal360, The Other Side. And you can go to the website, which is Paranormal360TV.com. So Paranormal360TV.com, and you can really read about it there. So with the current crop of television shows out there, the stars of the show really are the investigators that are out there, and you only see what is in front of the camera. That's all you see. So if you're in a room and like this little, take, I don't know, like one of my son's bottles of cologne here, and it's sitting on a table, and it takes off and is somewhere on the other side of the room. So you may not see that. Okay, all you will see is just the TV investigators reacting. Oh my God, what was that? Oh, tell us your name, demon. Shit
Right.
like that. With Paranormal360 TV, we are, although we're there, we're not the stars of the show. The house or the business, whatever, the ghost is the star of the show. Using 360 cameras, you will get everything around, and they will be rolling 24/7 the whole time we're there. So that bottle, you see that bottle lift up off the table, fly across the room, and break against the wall on the other side. You just don't see our reaction. You see it actually happening.
I love that.
And yeah, and that's what really is the great thing about the show. There is complete and total transparency.
And we need that.
Yes, we do need that because right now you have, like, I know that like Ghost Adventures, they like to tell people, well, it's just the 2 or 3 or 4 of us, however many in this building. No, dude. There is a team of producers. You have cameramen. You have soundmen. Don't fill us full of your bullshit. Like, we're done listening to it and we're done believing it. With Paranormal 360 TV, it's just Steven and I. That's it. And the equipment that we will use. So like I told people, go to paranormal360tv.com and you can get a better idea of what the show is all about. It's better. I think it's better to read it than to have somebody explain it to you. But it's a real simple concept. The house or the business, the building, the ghost is the star of this show. And with these 360 cameras, it catches everything that happens.
I love that. And when I talk to people about how they would feel about something like this, the consensus was they would love to watch. Like, so the reason that I think, and I've also been told, the reason there's so much faking in television is because producers require there to be some sort of action every so often. And that's what keeps their ratings up. That's what keeps the show going, that kind of thing. So without...
Let me just speak to that real quick to that, because it is salient to what you just said. Okay. With Paranormal 360 the other side, there are no producers. The producer is you. In the website, paranormal360tv.com, there is a link for our crowdfunder. We ask people to donate. If every little bit helps. It doesn't matter how much. Every little bit helps. But what we're asking for $12,000. This is for travel, because I would be traveling down to North Carolina. I live about 35 miles north of Chicago. Stephen lives in Beulahville, North Carolina, so I would be going there. And that also would help us in procuring the equipment that we need, the 360 cameras. But with this, there are no producers. You are the producer. The people that donate or just share the website, you are the producers. Right. So we don't have to worry about ratings or some suit that doesn't really give a shit about this subject matter. You get two guys who really do care, and people who are good enough to donate to this. You are the producer.
Right. And the people I've been talking to about this idea ever since I learned about it said they would watch it and be in support of it because, or if they could connect with whoever's doing the investigations, if they could connect with them, feel like they were a part of something versus just watching these people act a fool and calling out demons, and they feel like they're there. And then also, like, even if nothing's happening, like you're not getting any paranormal reactions or activity or anything like that, the fact that you have people there who are participating in it without the drama and without the showmanship of it all, that are genuinely trying to catch things, you're there with them. And it's almost like that's the entertainment, because you're almost on the ghost hunt with them, because you're waiting patiently for something to happen. You're not waiting to be fooled or jump scares.
Right. That's exactly it. You are part of the action. You are there. And we have run up against some serious opposition to this. Like TV, we've presented this to networks. They don't want it because they want to keep going with the current garbage that they're providing people. Because like I said, they're a suit in an office. They don't give a shit about this.
Yep. They only want the money coming in.
Right. And we've also come against, some opposition with your current reigning kings and queens of the paranormal, because this kind of TV show, this idea will change everything, will change the paradigm of paranormal television as it is. And they don't want that. They want to
Right.
continue being like I said, the reigning kings and queens of paranormal television. This idea, Paranormal360TV.com and Paranormal360 the other side, will change everything.
I agree completely. And you won't have the reason I think that you're having so much opposition to this is because of the money that kind of thing brings in, and also because of the control they have over it. They have control over the content, therefore they have control over the income it brings in. If you are working with the truth and you're working with a team that isn't worried about bringing in the money and creating the content, they're more concerned about putting out the truth and the real evidence and the real information, I think that people will start coming around, because it's starting to get old, the fake stuff. Like,
yes.
I'm hearing more and more that people don't want to watch these shows anymore. They enjoyed them at one time. They thought they were fun at one time, but it's gotten so ridiculous and so far-fetched. And the more we have access to information, the harder it is to believe the faking and stuff. And I'm seeing more and more people come around. So I think the show is going to take off, and it's going to be great as far as paranormal shows go, because I think people miss that. I think people miss the, like, when paranormal television started, you had more of the anticipation of something happening versus the guarantee something's going to happen, because you watch these shows now and something's going to happen, and that it's going to be silly and more than likely faked. Back when it started, it was more of like, oh, did that just happen? And then they investigate it, not it happened and they move on to the, oh, it happened, and then they move on to, oh, like it's just constant. It happens and no one's investigating. Like, I recently watched a debunking of Ghost Hunters, which was one of my favorites, because they did do a little better at the stuff that was happening and then the investigations of it all. And if you're gonna go ahead.
I was just going to say, when Ghost Hunters came on TV, I was excited. I'm like, wow, this is something that I've already been doing for 12 or 13 years. Finally, we have our very own television show. And I was like, I loved it. Like, the first 5 seasons or so, really dug it, man, really into it. And then there was the whole, they would do that live episode that they did. I think it was at Pea Patch Island. And you hear the voice talking, and then you see Grant's, he gets his, like, somebody
collar
pulled on his collar, and it came out later that the voice came through a speaker, and that he had a little doohickey thing in his sleeve that he was able to pull, and it actually pulled back on the collar. And when I saw that, I'm like, yep, I'm done, goodbye. And
same.
Ghost Adventures, fuck that, man. I mean, that's just stupidity. But
yeah, the first time I saw Ghost Adventures, I was excited and then immediately disappointed. So, yeah, but like you said, Ghost Hunters was so good when it started. You actually felt like they were doing right by the truth of it, and they were really investigating. And now it is all for show, and the more you can fake, the better, because the better reactions, the more people tune in, all of that stuff. But the people that matter, in my opinion, are the people that really want the truth, that really want to see the true stuff happening. Because the reason we're all in this is because we've all had our own experience. So we know that there is something. But the fact that they keep shoving this faking in our faces and expecting us to just go with it is so frustrating.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about Paranormal 360, the other side. You get done watching these television shows, and you're like, was that really real? Did I really see something that was real? With Paranormal 360, the other side, you will leave every episode knowing that you will have no doubt in what it is that you saw.
I love that. And
I saw something. And it's because of the 360 cameras that we will be using. But it's not just the 360 cameras. We will be using equipment. I can't tell you what it is, because people will steal it, as we all know.
Yeah.
Paranormal land, as Stephen and I like to call it, is full of cheats, thieves, and snakes.
Yes, it is.
A lot of this equipment has never been used before. And so it's not just a TV show. It's an experience in sight and sound. That's what we like to say.
I love that. That's going to be really great, because that's another thing that the other shows lack. you're watching it, but you're not experiencing it because, like you said, stuff is happening off camera that you can't see. If you hear a noise, that noise could have been anything, but you know already that they're going to spin it to be paranormal.
Right.
So
There will be no doubt.
yes, and I love it. I was recently on a tour where someone's cell phone dinged, and immediately the tour guide was like, "Oh, yep, that's the ghost." And I looked around to see if anyone else bought that. I was like, "No
That's
way
awesome.
that you guys all just like took that." And no, it looked like everyone else looked as confused as I was. So at least I wasn't alone. But yeah, I'm sick of the lack of transparency. So I'm very excited that this show, and I'm gonna put all your links to this so people can find it. And when I do the video for it for YouTube, I'm gonna put in the frame some screenshots and some images of the website so people know what they're looking for.
Thank you.
You are welcome. So I also understand that you're very passionate about the disability advocacy in the paranormal community. Would you like to tell the listeners a little bit more about that?
You know, I would. A little background on that. The reason why I feel passionate about advocacy for the disabled, I am. In 2016, I was diagnosed with a rare form of soft tissue cancer called synovial cell sarcoma, and it was stage 4, and it was in my left ankle, and I was told that if I didn't amputate my leg, that I would be dead within a few months. So, I mean, there is really only thing that I can do is just take the leg, man. Take it now.
For sure.
So, yeah, so I have my, for your viewers at home, my prosthetic. And, you know, it really kind of got me thinking, you know, being involved in the paranormal community, as well as being a person with, hang on, hold on.
You're good.
There we go. Being a person with a disability is the way television shows it, that, you know, like these big beefy dudes who, you know, are able-bodied and super muscular are the only people that are able to do this. And it really got me thinking that no, anybody can be involved in this. Like, this affects every single person, regardless of whether or not they're gay, heterosexual, no matter what, you know, color they are, what their social status is, and whether or not they're disabled. And so I want to be an advocate, not just for disabled people, but for everybody taking part in this. But, you know, a lot of people who are disabled, they're like, well, I can't walk around those places and be a part of the investigation. You can. There are ways. If you are in a wheelchair, you could be the person who monitors the cameras or goes over evidence. If you are a person that is sight impaired, if you're blind, you could be that person that listens to the EVPs, because as we all know, when you lose one sense, one becomes heightened, and the others become heightened. So you may be able, your hearing may be so much better having lost your sight, and you're able to hear things that other people can't hear.
Right. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, or, you know, like a person like myself who is an amputee, I walk with a prosthetic limb. I am able to get around. Or if you're an arm amputee, you are still able to get around. You are still able to take part in the investigation in one way or another. Don't ever let anybody tell you that you can't do something, because I will tell them, watch me. I will do it.
Right.
And because of this, I am part of a documentary that hopefully will be coming out within the next year or two. It's called Disabled Paranormal. It will be myself and 2 other people. One person is blind, one person is in a wheelchair. And we are going to show the world that just because you have a disability doesn't mean you can't be a part of this. These other people are 2 very active investigators. They go to a lot of different kinds of places, and they take part, and they're great investigators. And I can't wait to work with them, and I can't wait to do this this documentary, because I really do think it's going to change some minds and change some hearts.
I agree. That's awesome. I love that. And I think making more and more people feel like they can be included and participate in this is really important because we already have enough people saying it's not real. So the more people that we can include that believe, that support, that want to experience, that's really powerful, I think.
This should be a very inclusive community, and unfortunately, a lot of times it isn't. Like I've heard, stories from people, people of color, or people who are LGBTQ. They're like, I wasn't welcome.
Yep.
They didn't want me there, and it's like, wow, that sucks. I mean, I had to leave a group because they were having conversations. We did this investigation, and it was a same-sex couple on Chicago's North Side, and two women. And I left this group because we were having They were having conversation. They were calling this the Lesbo House, and it's like, dude, I'm not down with that, man. I can't. I'm not going to be part of something like that because that's just wrong to dehumanize and demean people like that. So,
Yeah.
I don't want to be just an advocate for people with disabilities being involved in this. I want to be an advocate for everybody to be involved.
I love that. Yeah, and I think that's important because right now we have so many of the bigger people, like you say, that are calling the shots and being exclusive. They're only letting who they want into their circle and sharing the information that they approve. So to have more people included and be allowed to share their opinions and, thoughts and experience things is really going to help push out the faking and the people who are currently running things.
Right. And you know yourself, because of the reason that the reason that we had you on the show was because of what was going on with the New England Society for Psychic Research. The guys who are currently running this, they don't even believe in this stuff, but they know they can make money off of it.
Exactly.
And look, it's like, I am not opposed to people making money on this. I'm not, because I sell books. I've written 4 books. I get paid from websites for articles that I write. Never would accept money for an investigation. Not going to do it. Don't make any money with the podcast, but I do make money with the things that I have written. So I'm not opposed to people making money with this. So I need people to understand. I need to be clear about that. But if you're making money on this and you don't really believe this, but your only purpose is to either be famous, have notoriety, or make money, then, my dude, you are in the wrong business.
Agreed. And yes, and morality has been called into question, like you said, very recently, where it was about the money versus the morals, about the money versus doing your work. Like, you are an investigator, you are supposed to research, you are supposed to look into things. You can't just platform any random Joe and make money off of them and expect to continue to have the respect and notoriety that you are used to, because we live in a world now where people can check you. They can fact check you. They can look into your situation. They can look into the people you're trying to platform. They can look into the ways you're trying to make money. And if you're doing it in a dishonest way, in an immoral way, people are going to call you out. And I'm one of those people. So it's really important. Thank you. I think it's really important for people to stand up and speak up. Like, you hear it in true crime all the time. See something, say something. It is the same for the paranormal. We may not be in the same believable sense of, true crime, because we have the evidence of true crime. We have the results. We have the prosecuted people, everything involved in true crime. But it's still important to make sure that the people in your community, whether it be paranormal, whether it be any kind of art you're in, I've heard drama happens in all these communities. I was a tattoo artist for a little while. There was so much drama and hatred in the community. If people would come forward with, it was, I actually had someone call into the shop I worked in and pretend to be a former customer, saying I gave them hepatitis with my dirty needles, which we all had. It was all clean, brand new equipment. Like, it was verifiable. And then the customer, who he said his name was something, and I didn't have a customer in my history of that. So it's just a scare tactic. And the scare tactics are abundant in every community. If someone feels challenged, if someone feels like you're going to take away their spotlight, they're going to attack you. And
that's exactly it right there. You have people that you have a lot of very insecure people that are involved in this, and they're just afraid that, oh, well, I'm going to talk shit about this person, because if that person gets ahead, then they're going to steal my spotlight. And believe it or not, Stevie, I have actually been told by a relatively well-known former TV investigator that I'm really good friends with and that I respect, and I know that he's legit. He actually told me once, he's like, Rick, I know for a fact that among many names on that does not play well with other lists, you're one of those names. You're one of those people because you have a big mouth. That you won't get any further than where you're at. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm good with that.
Yeah, and you say that now because that's how it is now. But the more people with the so-called big mouths, the more of them that speak up, and the more of them that tell their truths and expose truths and expose lies, the more this community is going to change for the better, I think.
I could not agree more.
All right. So before I finish my interviews, I always like to ask, so how do you feel about the Warrens, their legacy, and where it now lies?
So how much time do we got?
We got plenty. I want to hear it all.
So, okay, now I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. When I first heard about the Warrens back in like the 80s, I was like, wow, these people are awesome. I read their books, and I actually come from a very religious family. So I kind of grew up with the idea of, like there are demons, and, there is the devil, and he's out, they're out to possess you and, use you as their own personal hand puppet. So like the Warrens come along and you're like, wow, these people are really, really cool. But there was a few things that happened that kind of drew me away from that. First off, there was one of those one-off television shows back in the 90s that came out around spooky season during Halloween and all that, and they were interviewing Ed and Lorraine Warren, and Ed said something to the effect that all poltergeists are demons. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, wait a second here, dude. Now, I happen to know for a fact that in organized parapsychology, which was, around for a lot longer than you were, they have determined that a poltergeist is nothing more than psychic energy from a person that has gone completely bonkers. Right. And it's energy and stress that is internal with a person who has psychic or telekinetic abilities, and it becomes so great that it pushes outwards.
Yeah, and manifests.
Exactly. Moves things, breaks things, causes harm to people, whatever. And, that was one of the things that Ed had said. And it's like, no, I don't think so, man. And then there were, a lot of their books were called into question. Like, they didn't write their books. Their books were written by other authors. And I believe one of the names of one of the authors was Ray Garton. Yep. And he had wrote, I think it was called In a Dark Place. Yep. And I remember reading that book, and that book scared the shit out of me, man. I'm like, wow, these poor people. Well, it was Ray had admitted that, a lot of it was not real. The family in question had drug problems. The kids had massive behavioral disorders. And this was just a means for Ed and Lorraine Warren to make money.
Correct.
So I think that the final nail in the coffin was I had the great pleasure of interviewing Guy Lyon Playfair years before he died. One of my personal heroes in psychical research and in the paranormal. And, talking to a true gentleman of the paranormal was extraordinary, to say the least.
Oh, I bet.
And we talked about Enfield. and how the Warrens had, and this was before the movie had come, like years before the Conjuring 2 and the Enfield thing came out. And while we were off air, I asked Mr. Playfair, I was like, the Warrens claimed that they were there for the whole thing, and he stopped me and he's like, in his like perfectly clipped, gentlemanly British accent. I'm sorry, I'm fanboying here.
I totally understand. I would be too.
But like I said back then, these are the people you want to impress.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, in no uncertain terms, that they were there long enough for me to tell them to fuck off. That is exactly what that man told me.
I love that.
They were there for long enough for them to say, "Hey, Mr. Playfair," and the other gentleman who was involved with it,
Morris.
Right, Morris Gross, another great investigator that we have lost. And they were there long enough to tell them, hey, we can make money on this. We could put books out there. We could put TV shows out there. We could put documentaries out there. We could, make money. And like I said, like Mr. Playfair said, I told them to fuck off.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, I have to believe what Guy Lyon Playfair said, because he was there. He was boots on the ground. He was the person that was dealing with this family who was dealing with something that was horrific. And so that was the final nail in the coffin for my thoughts on the Warrens. I think that they were frauds. I think that they were hucksters. I think that they were there just to make money. I have no doubt, though, that they did start off with good intentions. I think a lot of people do get involved with this. They start off with the best intentions. They do start off with wanting to help people, but that was back in the 1950s. Over time, money came into it. Books came into it. TV shows came into it. Huge movie deals came into it. And it corrupted them, as it does with a lot of people. And it's sad, because like I said, I really do believe that they started off with the best of intentions, and money came into it and just did what it does. It corrupts people. And, I've heard some real horror stories concerning Ed and Lorraine. Like, Ed would have no problem shouting people down that disagreed with him. Or Lorraine would, be extremely spiteful and vindictive. And let me just say this. It's very difficult for me, having grown up in a predominantly Irish American family. A superstition is you never speak ill of the dead. And I was taught that from a very, very early age. And, but, with that being said, you still have this legacy that they have, that people believe in everything that they say. People believe that these movies, the Conjuring movies with, the Perron family, or, even in Enfield, there was no evil witch, or I'm sorry, there was no evil nun. There was no rooms with upside down crosses that were involved in Enfield. No, this was a family that was dealing with 50% legitimate activity in their home. And later on, there was trickery that was going on.
And that got talked about by anyone but the Warrens. Like, everyone has that information now, and everyone knows like how it went down versus what the movie and the Warrens say. So,
or even with the whole Amityville fiasco, we all know now that whole thing was created with the lawyers of Ronnie DeFeo and the Lutzes to make him look like, he was possessed by demons. And they bring the Warrens in, and they're like, oh yeah, totally. He was possessed by demons and killed his whole family. No, he was a young man who was dealing with some severe substance abuse and owed all the wrong people some money and took his family out because of it.
Yep. And like all of that stuff is available, but it's missed and overlooked because of things like the movie and the Warrens.
Right. And, even with the investigation that Hans Holzer had did with the house, I even kind of wonder about him a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't think that Hans Holzer um, was a legitimate parapsychologist and paranormal researcher, because he really is one of my influences. But I think that he may have gotten duped as well,
Yeah.
and that really is sad, because then that calls um, the legitimacy of his legacy into question.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I don't think he knowingly um, did that. Like I said, I think that he was duped.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I plan to do an episode and cover him, and in some of my research, I've noticed things like that, and I really do agree with you that I don't think it was him per se trying to perpetuate a falsehood, but just the fact, like, yeah, he got duped. It's because when we get this information, especially from people who are supposed to be the leaders of whatever, we want to believe it. We expect to be able to believe it. So when we find out we've been duped and we have to backtrack, it's really frustrating. And then it makes it like, it's really discouraging. It's harder to move forward and believe. And so, yeah, I imagine that it was something that just got overlooked by him, and he just went with it because he was so in to believing it and making sure he proved to people it was real.
Right. And and that's and again, I mean, he's not the only well-meaning person that gets duped into believing stuff. It happens all the time. But that's why you have to do your due diligence. You have to do the legwork. You have to do the research. And that's another great thing about Paranormal 360, the other side. There will be actual research, because you get with a lot of these television shows that they're like, well, this is a case of unrequited love and somebody killed themselves or somebody murdered somebody here. And Stephen will tell you that he's gone to some of these places and did his due diligence and did actual homework with this and found out that these stories just are not true. And anybody can make a story about, well, she was in love and he spurned her, so she went and threw herself off a cliff, or vice versa.
Exactly.
It happens with men as well. And it turns out, that's not true.
Right. And I've been seeing that a lot on the debunking shows, where they watch some of these paranormal content creators, and they're out and they go to a location and they tell you the so-called history of the location. And then you have the debunker and he's like, no, I did the research. I looked this up. That's not true. Why are they perpetuating this as a true story and building a ghost experience around it? So it cracks me up that people think they can just tell these fake stories and no one's going to call them out on it, because that's happening more and more. And I love when people get called out, because if you're not going to take the time to do the research and make sure your information is correct, you're not worth watching.
Well, that was like the whole, Zach Bagans and his whole demon house thing with that house.
Yeah.
What a joke. Like, I knew before I got sick and lost my leg, I was actually in social services. I worked in a residential treatment facility for kids that had behavioral and learning disorders. The job was too dangerous for me to go back to after I had lost my leg. And I knew somebody who worked in the Indiana Department of Children and Family Services. And they were like, no, none of that happened. This was a child that had severe ADHD, severe emotional trauma, severe behavioral disorder. There was no demons involved. There was no child climbing up the walls.
Yeah.
There was none of this. But Zach comes in, buys the house, and does this documentary saying that all of this happened. And the family went on with it because, of course, they were getting paid. So they went on. Of course, they went along with it.
And I heard that the family also were of the belief that things could possess you and demons did exist. And I heard that because this was pushed on the children took advantage and would use it to get out of school. So their attendance record came into question because they were missing so much school, because they would just say, hey, the demon has me today. I can't go to school, kind of situation.
I saw the original report that was done by the caseworker. I read this original report. It was sent to me. So I saw the original work up in the paperwork, and I'm like, there's no talk of demons here. There's none of this. So Zach buys the house, does his documentary, and then has the fucking house knocked down.
Yeah.
Well, why? Why would you do that if this is such a mecca of paranormal and
Exactly.
supernatural activity, Zach? Oh, well, because I didn't want other people here investigating because then they could
And
wind up being possessed. No, you had the
no,
house
they debunk you.
down because you're full of shit.
Exactly. You don't want anyone else coming in and debunking you.
Right. And just that was like another Amityville kind of thing, except the house
Mhm.
wasn't knocked down. People own the house after this, and they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. It has all the
Exactly.
original windows, has all the original doors, it has all this original stuff that they say, well, the windows were blown out, the door was blown off. No, everything
Yeah.
is to this 18th or 19th century home. So it's like, you really do have to look at all of this. You have to do your diligence. You have to do your research. You have to wade through legend to find the fact. And really, when you think about it, the facts can be just as terrifying as the legend, because even if that stuff doesn't happen, there are still people in homes and buildings that are experiencing things that they can't quite explain. So you need to do your research. You need to do the diligence to find out who really is haunting this house or building.
Agreed. Agreed. And not to mention the mental health aspect that people are ignoring just so they can portray or perpetuate haunting or demonic activity. Like
Right.
I see that in Nesper, unfortunately, a lot where they like to perpetuate these stories of possession. Like they have on the TikTok, there's a little girl that they're claiming is possessed, and I had confirmation that little girl had mental, like, learning disabilities, not to mention behavioral issues, and that was all confirmed by the family. So to go in and to use people like that and to exploit them and their situations, and even sometimes like convince them that it's paranormal when they may or may not have been of the mindset of that. Like maybe they were worried it was paranormal, but you come in and tell them, yes, it's absolutely paranormal. They're not going to go seek mental illness help.
So I have a story concerning that, and this one is going to it really upset me and still upsets me to this day when I think about it. I got a call from a friend of mine who was a psychic medium, one of the few psychic mediums that I've ever worked with that I am convinced has a legitimate ability. So she put me in contact with this woman, and she was having all kinds of activity that was going on in her house. She had just gotten out of a terrible divorce with an abusive alcoholic husband, and she was on her own for the first time with a daughter who was autistic, like severely autistic, like barely. She could barely, vocalize. She could barely speak. And so she moves into this home, and then suddenly she has all of this weird shit that's happening. She's got things moving. She's got things falling off walls. She's got things flying across the room. She has like this feeling of like energy and a cold wind blowing through the house and causing these issues. So she calls in a paranormal group that thankfully no longer exists. Fucking assholes. Anyways, let me get more into this. And they told this woman that her house was infested with demons and that her autistic child with special needs was possessed.
Oh no.
I was angry. I was livid. Like, my wife is listening to me have this conversation with this woman on this phone. And she's like, your face was beet red because of how angry you were listening to what this woman had to say. So they told this woman who was penniless at the time, penniless. She had nothing because she had spent everything that she had so she could get her and her daughter out of this horrible experience. They told this woman that they would charge her $3,000 to come in, exorcise her daughter, and get rid of these evil spirits out of her home.
Oh my God.
I had to stop, and there was silence from me, silence from this woman for a few minutes on this telephone call, because I had to calm myself down. So I told her, I'm like, here's the situation. Your daughter's not possessed. She is a person that is dealing with some very serious issues. You are a person who is dealing with some very serious issues. I said, I suspect what you have in your home is not the devil and is not demons. I suspect that you are dealing with a legitimate poltergeist. And you are the poltergeist focus. She is the conduit from whence this energy is coming from and causing all of these issues. I still get chills and feelings of anger when I talk about this case. I'm having them right now. Like, I got goosebumps. And I told her, here's what you need to do. You need to talk about your problems. I took this from a page from Nandor Fodor, who was a famous mid-20th century parapsychologist and psychologist. And I told her, I'm like, you need to find somebody to talk about your issues, everything that is going on in your life that has brought you to this point. You could talk to a licensed clinical social worker, because I told you I was working in social work at that time. And or you can talk to a therapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Get this out of you. Talk to somebody so you don't hold this in and then it explodes into your physical environment. She did. She found through her work, which she had one of those like employee assistance programs, she found a licensed clinical social worker that she could talk to. 2 weeks after speaking with this individual, this person of great compassion, the activity in her home stopped.
Wow.
There was no more weird energy, no more wind, no more things flying around. She was able to get all of this shit that she was holding inside out. And it stopped her. It stopped this activity happening in her home. I've lost contact with this woman because this was maybe 10 or 11 years ago, maybe longer. But from what I understand, she was able to get her life together. She no longer had any more contact with this asshole ex-husband of hers. And her daughter were living a good life.
That's really great.
The moral of the story is, don't listen to what people like this have to say. You
Right.
don't go to a doctor and the doctor was like, holy shit, you're going to die of cancer. No, you go to another doctor and you get a second opinion. And this is what this
Right.
woman did. And it saved her life. Now, I'm not suggesting that I'm like a hero or this savior or anything like that. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that this was a woman who had some serious shit going on in her life. She just needed somebody to listen and not tell her that her special needs daughter was possessed and her house was infested with demons. Fuck that. There are a lot of people that are in paranormal land who will tell you this kind of thing. You know yourself from dealing with Nesper that they're there. Don't listen to them. Go to people who know what they are talking about.
Right. And I think the number one red flag in situations like this is when you have your so-called investigator coming in and immediately declaring what it is without talking to you, without hearing you out, without experiencing anything, without sitting in. Exactly. Without observing. Like, come on, the scientific method. That's how investigators apply their research. Like, when you go into an investigation, you have to do the scientific method. You have to rule out anything else. You have to make sure you cover everything, all your bases. You can't just walk in and be Mr. Know-It-All because you think, or because you're pressing an agenda and you want to perpetuate whatever mission your crew is on, like Nesper, everything's a demon. Like you said, in the second opinion, if someone comes in and they immediately give you this declaration, definitely ask somebody else, because nobody has these correct answers, like correct or legitimate answers. It's all speculation. It's all based on research, experience, stuff we've looked into. So if you're getting a consensus of that, maybe you can believe it, but don't take the first abrupt opinion, because a lot of these people are biased. A lot of these people are totally in it for themselves. They're not in it to help. So I think that's a great thing to pay attention to make sure when you're dealing with these so-called investigators, watch them and how they investigate. Pay attention to if they actually do the work or have done the work in the past, and like understand who you're working with and how they work.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you don't, when when you're looking for a plumber and you go to Google, you don't call the first plumber. You go to a couple
Exactly.
different plumbers. You
read reviews.
read reviews. Or Yelp or whatever. You have one doctor tells you that, like I said, one doctor tells you you have a serious medical condition. Don't just take what he says. Go to another doctor. Get a second opinion. Find somebody else. Like, you get a lot of these, like, these newer groups of people that, well, I've been involved in this for 5 years. No, look for people that have really done the work, that have really been involved in this for not just 5 years, but decades, or at
Right.
least are under the tutelage of somebody who knows what they're doing and what they're talking about.
Right. And also look for someone who isn't just one-sided. The more
Right.
people you find that are one-sided, the less likely you are to get a well-rounded investigation or opinion of what's going on with you.
Right. Exactly. So, just be careful who you let into your home. That's all I can say. Just
Yes,
be careful.
for sure.
I've heard many, many horror stories, and that was just one of them. But it's, other horror stories of people who are, they were dealing with they're swearing in their home, or like, oh my God, my watch came up missing, that kind of thing. That happens a lot. So just really seriously, my advice, be careful who you let into your house.
Right. And utilize your search engines, utilize the internet, because it is there for us to use now. So if you have a gut feeling telling you to question something, question it, look it up, do your research, make sure you're protecting yourself and anyone you may be working with or involved with, so you don't have to deal with that drama.
Exactly.
Alrighty, before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners?
The only things I want to share is, you can find Paranormal360TV.com. Check that out. If you're able to donate, thank you so much. Highly appreciated. Every little bit helps. But if you can't, share the website.
Absolutely.
So, maybe there's somebody out there who can help. Listen to the Shadow Initiative, Paranormal Talk and TV, wherever you get your podcast fix. We even have a video version so you can look at our ugly faces on YouTube. And I've, written 4 books. The Geek's Guide to the Strange and Unusual, Poltergeist, Ghosts, and Demons, Behold, Shocking True Tales of Terror and Some Other Spooky Stuff, Bullets, Booze, and Babes, The Haunted Criminal History of Chicago and Illinois, and Ghost Watch. All of those can still be found at Amazon. You can read things that I have written at various different places, SpookyIsles.com, Legends Magazine, ParanormalStudy.com. There's so many.
I love it. And
if you just put in Rick Hale Paranormal, you will find a sickeningly amount of stuff that I've done over the years.
I love it. And I'll make sure I link everything in the show notes and down below for those of you on YouTube. And I'll have everything accessible so you can find everything we've talked about today.
Thank you so much, Stevie.
Yes, and thank you for coming on. And I know that Stephen didn't want to come on, which I totally understand and respect, but I want him to know that he's always welcome.
Right, he is. And it's not that he doesn't want to. Stephen is just he's kind of weird about doing shows. He's never really explained it to me. Yeah, sure, he's a big shot and he's done like Coast to Coast AM and stuff like that. He gives a shit. But he's very elusive with that kind of thing, I guess you could say.
I kind of dig it. But thank you so much. I will let you go for now, and I will let you know when everything is out and up for listening and viewing.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much, Stevie.
All right. I will see you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I can't thank Rick enough for coming on my show and having this chat with me. I hope you all enjoyed it too. Be sure and go check out the Shadow Initiative with him and Stephen Lancaster, and check out their YouTube channel. And I'll also link all of Rick's books so you can check those out as well. Links below and in the description. Thanks again, Rick. And thanks again to both Rick and Stephen for having me on their show. Also, thank you to my dear friend Amy Lee over in Ireland for providing the sweet ghostly Irish voice. I thought that would be fun to add, so shout out to Amy Lee. Thanks, lady. A couple things real quick before I go. There's a new podcast out that I think you all will love. Go check out the podcast called They Hid What, hosted by Shannon. If you guys like what I do, you'll love this show. Because I cover all things the Warrens at the moment, and They Hid What covers the dark history of anything and everything. So definitely go give that show a listen. It'll be in the show notes as well as down below if you're watching on YouTube. Also, speaking of YouTube, I am almost to 1,000 subscribers. You guys, that's amazing! Thank you so much. And to show my appreciation, as soon as I hit that 1,000 mark, I'll do a special giveaway. You guys know how much I love a good giveaway. So if you haven't already, go subscribe on YouTube. And thank you to all of you who are subscribed and who have been listening, and all you new listeners too. I've got so much more coming. Oh, and since I had to put off recording, the Lindley Street episode and my bonus episode about my trip will now be coming out next Friday. Thank you everyone who's been patiently awaiting those. I super appreciate you guys. Until next time.